a microphone. Two parents and a microphone.
Welcome to Two Parents.
And a microphone.
We're the two parents.
And we got a microphone.
That's our qualifications.
That's it.
I'm Shante.
And I'm Chris.
And we're the host of this podcast.
Yeah. Why don't you tell them the topic we're talking about and then tell me, because I don't think you've told me yet. So we're all going to find out together.
Yeah. This one is imposter syndrome and how that plays in to parenting.
Oh, yeah. That plays into it a lot.
Why do you say that?
Because your kids always think you're some kind of imposter, especially as they get older.
Yeah, well, I asked our son, I said, hey, we're going to be talking about this idea of, like, imposter syndrome. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And he just looks at me and he goes, when you say imposter, I think of Among Us. And I was like, I didn't know whether we've done a good job or we've done horrible.
Well, let me rephrase that. It's not that they think that, but you're always thinking that they think that you're
an imposter. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So maybe, yeah, I don't know, because there is.
At least maybe I'm just the only one that deals with that.
maybe you're thinking you're always an imposter.
I'm thinking that they're thinking that I'm thinking that they're thinking
that you're.
The rabbit hole just keeps going down really, really far.
Yeah, I think that's how the imposter syndrome actually affects us, though. When you think about it, is we go to do something, and then there's that negative self-talk that's like, you're not good enough, you shouldn't be doing this, what are you doing, you don't know what you're talking about, and things like that. And so it plays into like everyday life, really.
And it's just easy to project that onto your kids because they're just right there.
Yeah.
Involved
That's
in
very
life.
true. But I think also there's this idea that the kids are smarter than sometimes we give them credit for.
Yeah.
And so it can really inflame that imposter syndrome in us through our insecurities.
100%.
I was talking to a parent the other day who said, you're going to have to take yourself and rewind the clock a couple years and tell me how you dealt with your son when he was at my son's age.
Yeah.
And I was kind of getting some details from her. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I can't, I don't know if I can just rewind the clock and just put myself right back there.
Frozen in time somewhere.
And then she goes, well, when we take the phone away from our child because it's a measure of discipline, that child goes and then will get on the iPad. And I go, oh, right. You transported me right back to those ages when we would do something and then our children, especially one of them, would find a loophole, what we thought was a loophole, right?
Right.
So, for example, it could have been, hey, if you do this certain thing, you're going to lose your phone. And that would prompt this child to be like, okay. And maybe grab a different electronic.
Then they get on their computer or something like that. And in our mind, we're going, of course they understand that it's all electronics.
Exactly. And so then, like, we project on them, like, why are you trying to manipulate? Why are you trying to be difficult? Why are you?
Yeah.
And the truth is that child's, whether it was intellect or just true ignorance of the situation, really rose up in us insecurities. And it does, like, make you go, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Right.
And it can impact, like, how we parent out of those times.
Right. Well, I think, too, because also back when we were growing up, there wasn't a whole lot of electronics to choose from.
That's true.
So it was kind of...
You get the Atari taken?
Here, or Pong, or whatever. Here, in this day and age, there's so many different types of electronics that you kind of have to be more specific.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, do you remember being disciplined a lot as a child?
Some.
Okay. Did you find loopholes? Did you find, like, if they take this away, I can find this?
Like, I just assumed they meant everything, so...
Yeah, I think I was more afraid
try. There was that.
It's like, I don't think I should try my luck at this right now. And that makes me wonder, like, I mean, has parenting changed over the generations? Like, are we doing this right? Have we gotten closer to, like, getting it right, or we've gotten a lot further from it? I mean, I'm not really sure. I think a lot of times, like, I was probably afraid to question my
Right.
parents. I mean, there were times that I got a little bit of boldness in me. It
Right.
didn't always work out so well for me.
Yeah.
But, with that, I think even looking back to like, well, how we were parented versus how we're parenting, and it's like, are we getting it right? Are we getting it wrong?
Yeah.
There's this idea of, the kids didn't say much. They didn't really have a voice as much as we've given our children a voice.
Right.
And so I just sometimes go, like, when our kids do find that loophole, like my friend was talking about, like, oh, you took my phone, but I'm going to get on your my iPad. Then for me, a lot of times it sparked me to go back and do the work to see what I missed.
Right.
But it doesn't always happen right in the moment.
Right.
Because I am very guilty of believing that my children have manipulated the situation. They knew what they were going to do. But the truth is that really is just an insecurity. And a lot of times it is that kind of imposter syndrome of, I'm supposed to be the authority. I'm supposed to be the expert, but I have no idea what I'm doing right now.
Right. And, their actions kind of just pull all that out.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
like, it
definitely.
is like having a child pokes every hole possible in your theories, in your...
And what you think you know.
Yeah, and everything in your actions. It's always like...
What you think you may be good at or whatever. Because also there's the times when you think you're doing something good. Not like good as in like right or wrong, but like something they should be impressed with. You think they'd be impressed with because, growing up, those are things that would have impressed kids back then.
Right.
But you do it and they're like, cool.
Yeah.
Or it's not really that great. And then you're going, well, maybe, I'm not as cool as I thought I was.
Are you talking about your dad jokes?
Yeah, sometimes. They're an acquired taste.
Yeah.
They appreciate them a little bit more.
As they've gotten older.
Yeah.
That's so funny. It would make them cringe so much. And now...
Well, it's like a brief
them a
period when they were real young, they were hilarious.
Yeah.
Because anything I did, or we did, would be hilarious just because we're the parents. Then there's that transition stage where it's like the exact opposite. Everything we do is just super cringy. And part of it is now when they're older, they're the man babies or whatever, like we talked about. I don't know if it's they really appreciate them or it's just an acquired taste. They're like,
or they
just
feel sorry for you.
Yeah, exactly. So
it probably is that one.
It's just a different way of playing the imposter syndrome game.
Yeah.
And the questions
like
that you have.
Which one? I think I feel sorry for you. There's now seeing maybe Dad will be in a diaper some days. We'll give him the best days he's got now.
You see that his mind is slowly fading away. Fading away.
No, really. No, I do think there is something to that about those transition stages. And like you said, how they go from these younger children who, like, everything you do is cool. You're the authority. They want to be around you. They want you in their lives. Hey, come be the helper in my classroom. Come on my field trip. And then they start getting to a point like, don't look at me. I don't want my friends to meet you. Yeah. And like the crazy thing is our really sometimes, I should have called her out, but there are times when this particular child...
We'll that part out.
This particular child will seem to not want us to meet her friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is wrong with you? All of your friends love me. They think I'm cool. Like,
they end up
and they
us.
do. They actually come and they talk to me
and
a lot of times reach out for help or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But this child is super resistant sometimes to have us around her friends. And I'm
weird.
like, I was just in your classroom, like, volunteering last week. Like, what happened? And so there is something to those transition stages. And I think that does play into the imposter syndrome, like you said, is... what am I doing? I think that's the question a lot of times is, are they going to see through this facade and find out that I'm a fraud?
Right. Well, I think, too, there's, as we're talking, like, thinking about how weird it is sometimes where, without even knowing it, all of a sudden our value gets placed in what our kids think of us.
That's pretty heavy there. And it's hard to admit because, like, what we were talking about with our parents, like, what we saw was I'm the parent, you're the child, you're going to do what I say, like you look up to me, you respect me. And if we're honest, and maybe it's just us, maybe it's not our audience, but a lot of times the way our child sees us actually does play into whether we think we're doing a good job or not.
Right. What?
We've had to remind ourselves sometimes, just because they don't like it doesn't mean that we're wrong.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. But I can speak to that too, like as a dad, like seeing your kids when they're real young, like you're the hero. And that can be very intoxicating. You know, like, oh, I like this. This is great. Maybe I am,
Yeah.
And then as that transitions away, all of a sudden you're not the hero.
Right.
You're kind of like the anti-hero.
Yeah.
You're the guy that shows up, they're like, what are you doing?
Right.
Why would you do that? And you're like, this is the same thing I was doing a year ago. Like, nothing changed.
Right.
I'm still doing the same thing.
Right. Well, how does that play into kind of that insecurity or feeling like an imposter for you?
I think it is, like, you can start to think, like, was it really, like, me? Like, was cool or was funny or was hilarious, or was it just that age? They're just naturally thinking that way. Because all of a sudden now they're not. So maybe, was it me? Was it
I got you.
their age? Was it, just because they had no other thing to compare me to, so I was the only thing in front of them. So
now they have options.
Now they have options, and
you're like the knockoff brand.
Will they choose me? Am I going to be as cool as their uncle or their friend or whatever? Because now they have options.
Right. Yeah. So, that makes a lot of sense, because I mean, for you particularly, humor is something that you've kind of prided yourself on. Like, you've brought just that fun to our family, and sometimes tense situations, there could be that humor. But you're right. So that, am I really funny? Do I really, have value there?
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I think, and I think for me, it has been how much I care. Like, there's always been this thing about seeing my heart, and I want you to know that I love you and I'm fighting for you. And here I might have to make a very difficult decision of discipline.
Yep.
Or, having a hard conversation or bringing something to their attention, and I'm getting blank stares or tears, or, I've met with frustration or anger, and it's like, maybe, who knows? Maybe I don't love them. Maybe I'm a
Right.
It's that idea of looking for an adult, realizing you are the adult. I experience that a lot, and not just like in parenting, but in life. But I do think parenting amplifies it sometimes.
Whereas when they were little, it was every time let's talk, they'd be like, okay.
I don't know what family you grew up in.
No.
But, or what family you've been parenting.
Maybe,
but I don't know that was
maybe I'm looking at it through imposter lenses. Maybe that's what it was. No.
I mean, you guys always joke about mom's ideal versus what she gets.
Right,
and that would have been my ideal if they just sunk in, oh, talk to me. Now, I guess they would, like at bedtime, they did invite me to lay down and talk, and I think that was a ploy to get out of going to sleep, though.
Sure.
But even now, like, it's like, one of them wants to talk, but the other is just like, good night. So, yeah, I think how do you think that we've handled that idea that maybe I'm not, or like being an imposter, like I know I'm supposed to be the authority. I know that I'm supposed to be able to direct you.
Right.
Yet sometimes I feel like I'm a fraud and I'm just playing a role. Especially when their questions come up.
Yeah.
How do you think we've done with that in our family?
I know for me at first I didn't handle it very well. Because, it was hard, especially when they were younger, and they did start having questions, and I didn't have answers to all the questions, whereas I thought, as a dad, as a man, like, I'm supposed to have all the questions. So it was hard for me to say, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Things like that. Whereas I've become more comfortable now saying that.
Right.
And saying, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Or let's find out together, or, directing them to somewhere where they could probably find out, or trying to research myself to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I know that was, and if I remember correctly, I would sometimes, in that moment, could react defensively, or there used to be a joke where when they would ask me something I wouldn't know, my go-to was, I'm pretty sure that's what it is, or something along those lines. To eventually, when they started getting older, they go, well, that means Dad doesn't know.
Yeah.
That was kind of like my cover up of, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's what it means.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the answer, or I'm pretty sure that's who that was, whatever their question they're asking, because it was just my cover.
Right.
Because I didn't want them to know that I didn't really know.
Yeah. That's so interesting, and I think that is tied. We've talked about this of sometimes we get these bad perceptions of what it looks like to be a leader, because as a parent you really are a leader
pretty much, and
so it depends on what your story or what your narrative was of what it looks like to be a leader.
Yep.
So for you, I think it was, I'm supposed to have all the answers, I'm supposed to know the direction.
Yeah.
And so as our children would question, they would bring things to our attention or go, I mean, I didn't see it that way. And then it would make you defensive because of the insecurity. And on the other hand, for me, I felt like as a leader, I've got to make it right.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not that I can't be wrong, but when I am, I feel like a failure until I go back and make it right. A lot of times I've taken the responsibility for everybody else. So, you know, we've talked about in the past the nature versus nurture. And when our children didn't get something, I didn't really, and I still don't necessarily look at, all right, well, you're missing something, right? There's some work that you need to do on your side, especially when they were younger. It was all about, I missed something.
Must have been
and
you,
so I spent a lot of time trying to correct.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So when I said phone, you didn't realize it meant all of electronics. So now I make a note to self. Okay, I have to speak in this language that is uber clear, and I have to detail everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Where one child needed that, and the other's like, that's common sense, you know. And so even that didn't lead me to believe that there was something on their side that they could be doing as well.
Yeah.
And because I took leadership as, like I said, that responsibility.
Right.
You know, you hear everything rises and falls on leaders. Well, if we're falling apart, oh my gosh, there's something on me. And so where you wanted to have all the answers, I probably took the backlash of most things that went wrong.
Yeah, and that's a lot of it was because I didn't, realize that everything rises and falls on leaders. I don't want anyone to think that things were crumbling or falling or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it was more of a protection, because then that reflects on me as a leader, as opposed to being honest, being vulnerable, which finding out that actually attracts people to follow you.
Yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to repels them, which is what I thought in my mind.
Yeah, so let's talk about that then, because we definitely have been vulnerable enough to share that, like, we didn't always get this right.
Yeah.
That our children have challenged us in ways to arouse our insecurities, and there's been either self-loathing or defense mechanisms that we've used.
Right.
So failures. Audience has that pretty clear. Like, we have gotten it wrong.
A lot.
But what do you think we did right in that? When we started realizing, hey, this is doing something inside of us we don't like. Is there anything you can think of that, like, maybe we did this right, we were able to pivot?
When it comes to, like,
addressing those things
where
addressing the things where we felt like we were an imposter, these insecurities. So, like, how did you turn from automatic defense mechanisms to being more vulnerable?
Okay.
Like, have I shifted from having all the responsibility?
I think some of it was, taking those steps to be vulnerable and realizing that they weren't just going to run away and be like, well, I'm not following you because you don't know the answer.
Right.
Or you got that wrong.
Right.
I think that helped me feel more comfortable to be able, and then also seeing that opens them up to do the same. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is actually, I'm being a good role model in doing this, because it's going to help them later on in their relationships to be able to come back and go, hey, I didn't get that right.
Right.
I'm not really sure, or I don't really know the answer to that, or would insert flaw there.
Right.
That it allows them to, because I think it takes a good deal of humility to be able to do that, and that's one of the things we want our kids to be able to walk in is humility.
Yeah.
So I guess it also, seeing that, it actually can model that for them in doing that, and seeing that, at times produce that in them, it helped me feel a little more comfortable doing that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think that was like kind of that leading into, while we struggled a lot with our own insecurities and knowing that parenting,
and still do.
And parenting pokes holes. Like it, even as they gotten older and wanted to have their independence, and it's like, well, I'm not sure I like that, and they can challenge me on, why? Like, what have I done wrong, or or, and a lot of times it comes down to, I just don't want you to. And that's hard to admit because I don't have a great reason why I'm telling you no right now.
Yeah.
And I'm faced with my own insecurity, where here I am supposed to be this parent. I'm cheering you on. I'm watching you grow. You're going to soar. You're going to do great things. And yet I'm wrestling with my own ability to release. And that's in every season, right? And so I think what you said is 100% right. While I know I personally still wrestle with, am I getting it right? Am I a fraud?
Yeah.
One thing that combats that is the vulnerability, being open, being authentic, being honest, going, hey, I didn't realize this is how you took that. Or now even going, I'm human too, and I'm going through a new season with you, and like, this is one thing we told our first child a lot was, first time we've done this, it's me and you, like, we're figuring it out together, and letting them into the process. And I think what we found is that's what good leadership is. That's what good parenting is being open to learn, even if it means I learn something new from my child, and not feeling like I've got to have it all together, because it's more about loving them well, and guiding them in the wisdom we know, but also allowing the redirect when we need to, allowing to go back, circle back. We talk about that a lot in our family. Like, I'm gonna circle back because I got this wrong. Let's go talk about it. Or let's clarify some things, and we do that a lot. Like, hey, we're gonna circle back to this. And I think by doing that, by really going, hey, this is my title, this is my role. I'm a parent, right? I'm not an imposter. I am a parent.
Right.
This is my abilities as a parent. These are my weaknesses.
Right.
And then how do I kind of put in processes to, guard up my weaknesses and work in my strengths.
Right.
And all the while learning. And I think that's one thing that's helping me combat this imposter syndrome, not only in parenting, but also in life. Just because it's like, hey, this is what I'm doing, but I don't at any level claim to have achieved, to have perfected.
Right.
I'm in process.
Remember, we're not gods or gurus.
Not gods or gurus. And I think that just helps. It's like, this is what it is.
Yeah. And
at that level, I don't feel the tendency to kind of feel like I need to hide, or am I a fraud? No, I'm a parent. That's 100%.
Yeah.
And this, I'm a parent. I've made mistakes. I've had successes.
Right.
But, our lives aren't that snapshot of either.
Right.
And, trying to weave it together as good as possible to make this kind of beautiful picture of legacy at some point.
And to go back to something you were talking about earlier about, when you would tell them no, and it all becomes down to, well, I just don't want you to do it.
Yeah.
I think for me, that's the imposter syndrome would play into that as well too, because I don't want you to do it because other people may see that you're doing it, may look at my parenting, and then all of a sudden maybe I'm not a good parent.
Wow,
because the expectations that you have on yourself as a parent, or something you've judged other parents on, and all of a sudden you're kind of sitting under that same microscope. Yeah. And you're not necessarily parenting it because you think it's right or wrong, but it's because you're worried that someone else is going to think you're a fraud.
Yeah.
Because your kids are doing whatever, or you're allowing them to do this, or allowing them to do that.
Wow. You just brought this to a whole different level. You just opened up.
We'll have to keep this
can of worms.
And take this into a different podcast.
There is, that idea of what are other people thinking as well. I was just internalizing it. Thanks for ruining my life right there. Now I have to worry about what everybody else is thinking too. I appreciate that. But that is true. That is true. Like, because there's always the tendency to believe what you will not do until you are faced with the choice of what you're going to do. And like, so it's before
that was pretty deep.
Yeah. Well, it was the whole, before
That's some
you were a
stuff
parent,
right there.
Before you were a parent, I will never. My children will never. And then you become a parent, and
it just goes right out the window.
It's all of a sudden I'm in survival mode. I have no idea.
Yeah,
There's actually some pretty funny reels that I had been watching about before parenting, after parenting. I'll link that to this podcast just so everybody can see. But it's true. It's so true, and I didn't even consider that aspect of it as, well, how is other people
not only are you worrying about your kids thinking you're an imposter, then you're also, I mean, this is me. Maybe no one else has struggled with this. If you have, put in the comments so I don't feel so bad. Whereas then we're also worried about whether other parents or other people are going to think.
Yeah.
Based on what your kids are doing.
Yeah, that's really true.
Do they think you're an imposter or not really a real good parent or something like that?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and I guess I internalize it, but I do that by comparing myself to external like influences sometimes, because even with us having anything to say about parenting, I feel like an imposter there sometimes. It's like we have two. Sometimes I go, what do we have to say, right? What do we have to say about parenting? Yeah. And when people reach out to us,
How long have we been talking about doing this podcast?
It's been a while, because it's like, do we have something to say? But we had to get past that. Same thing, imposter syndrome of, well, here's where we're at. Here's what we have to say. It might help you. It might not help you. At the end of the day, we're going to throw it out there.
Right.
And try to build community and be vulnerable. And
it may help somebody.
And it might help somebody, and hopefully we'll see, like what we've seen in our children is they're willing to now be vulnerable and circle back and admit their mistakes. And and it's not perfect, but it is so much better. Like, they're not running around hiding their feelings or hiding.
There's definitely a lot of improvement.
Right. They're not hiding like, well, I've gotten this wrong, I've gotten that wrong. And that's why I thought it was so funny when I asked our son, do you struggle with an imposter syndrome? And he's looking at me like, what do you mean? Among Us? Like, that's the only, he's like, I guess, like. It's
the only reference to imposter he has.
He's like, I guess, like, social media has ruined me because I don't know what you're talking about. And so I'm like, okay, that's great. So, and then I'm like, well, do you feel like, you should be like you're a fraud at something? And he goes, well, yeah, I mean, like, I play music a lot, and then I feel like I should be better than I am. And I'm looking at him like, this is the kid who, within 2 weeks, started playing piano with two hands. Picked up a guitar and is playing all the rock riffs. Like, he learns a song in a day. And I'm like, okay, you don't have any idea what I'm talking about. Go back and play Among Us.
Bad example. Let me ask
Among Us. Like, you're right. You're pretending to be something you're not.
I'll talk to you in 20 years.
Yeah. So, so we would love to hear kind of from you. Like, where have you struggled with imposter syndrome? Have your children's questions rose up any insecurities or kind of like feel like they outsmarted you because you told them one thing, it applied in your mind to everything, but they found the loophole.
Or do you think that we're imposters?
Yeah, let us know. I mean,
let us know what you think.
That'll be great for our self-esteem. But yeah, really, just let us know. Join in the comments. Like we've said so many times, we want this to be a community. We want to hear from you guys. Love to keep the conversation going. So do you have anything else, Chris?
I think that's it. I think we're good. Cue the theme music.
Two parents and a microphone.